Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Our guest today is Dr. Francene Van Sambeek. She holds a doctorate of veterinary medicine from Michigan State University, earned her master's of avian medicine from the University of Georgia, and is a diplomat of the American College of Poultry Veterinarians. Her area of expertise include broiler and broiler breeder intestinal integrity, vaccines, and animal welfare. Welcome, Dr. Van Beek. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
So let's start by having you tell us about your role at Elanco Animal Health and how it is that you interact with poultry producers on what I'm assuming is a fairly regular basis.
Yes, yeah. So I'm a what's called a technical consultant with Elanco. I am a veterinarian by training, and I work with a pretty wide demographic of companies across the Deep South area, which includes Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi. And so I travel quite a bit for a living to go to everybody's operations and just really try to help them make decisions, better decisions.
So you're out there seeing what's going on and really, interacting with them. That's great. You bring us a wealth of information here, I'm sure. Walk us through then why data and analytics are important tools for producers when to consider in their operations. I mean, there has to be a way to track things other than just going out and visually seeing things. So tell us why those things are important.
Yeah. So data really drives accurate decision making, and it really helps you in the planning process. So by utilizing data, you can make better decisions about, what program do I need to be on now or in the future? What are my goals in trying to control coccidiosis? And then, just the overall health of the birds. What are my decisions that can really help me do that? And data is what gives you that power. Without data to drive your decisions, all you're really doing is guessing rather than predicting. So one example I can share is we utilize Elanco's health management system. It's called HTSi for short. It contains over 6 million data points, and we use those data points to help guide us in program planning to really drive a more data-centric process. We track anticoccidial programs, and we put those into that database. We track it by producer. We track it over time. We then use that to benchmark a index, which we call intestinal integrity index. With that index, we can then help customers we help our customers because we make better recommendations about, what programs should I be on during this particular season or within my own production system? How long can I run that program? And then quite frankly, what order do I need to be putting my programs in? Because it does make a difference. I look at a lot of different coccidio programs, and all those are entered into our database, the HTSi system, which, by the way, is the largest necropsy broiler database in the world. By looking at that, we do predict how long can you stay on this program, and it allows us to look at the current program usage and as well as try to predict future programs to allow you to better plan for your bird health, your anticoccidial programs. I guess one example I can use is when I have a producer that's been on an ionophore only or a chemical only program, we really need to look at how long have you been on that program, how many cycles can you run, and then quite frankly, if we can predict fairly well, like when we'll see coccidial lesions start to rise, indicating it's time to go to your next program.
That's pretty amazing, all that data that you have, and I'm sure you've been collecting it for a long time. But now, Elanco has a new tool to help poultry companies. Tell us about that.
Sure. So I mentioned HTSi. That is our data management tool, and it really puts producers in control of their own data. Because we can use it to identify, are there any patterns or trends that would give us some early indications of, bird health problems or health issues. By looking at it and seeing those trends, we can actually put interventions in earlier, and that allows us to have those targeted interventions early that we won't lose as much performance in the long run. we can compare that over time and see if those interventions work. Do we need to try something else? Quite frankly, it also helps support a sustainable production system for our poultry industry, and that will improve bird health over time, as well as bird welfare, which is a huge issue for the industry right now. So specific to the tool that you mentioned, we call it the Intestinal Integrity Index, or I2 for short. What it does, it provides a kind of an overall picture of broiler and turkey intestinal integrity. The index itself, it's not just coccidiosis, which I do spend a good bit of my time looking at. It also includes 23 other intestinal variables that we look at on a regular basis. Those could include things like gizzard erosions or necrotic enteritis or excessive fluid in the gut, anything that might be impacting, overall bird health. All these conditions that I look for, we have a score that we give them based on to what degree are they happening in that bird's gut. And we are all aligned along a very specific grading system. So everybody that inputs into the system knows that they're all calling it exactly the same way. We then take any measures that go into that score and we'll weight them, because not every lesion is going to cause the same degree of damage to that intestine that something else might cause. We then take that weighted score and feed it into our database, and that allows us to come up with the intestinal index score. Every bird starts with 100% on their score. That would indicate that there is no damage to that intestinal tract. There's nothing there that would say your birds are going to have an issue. And then from there, as the weighted lesions are fed into the system, they will lose points. So obviously the score will range from 0 to 100. We want to keep it as close to 100 as possible, because that would indicate that there's no damage, there's nothing there that would drive that bird to not perform to its optimal maximum. I think I said, like, every lesion has a weighted score, and that has been verified within our system in terms of the weighting of that lesion, so that we have a very good confidence level that what we're grading and what we're calling really does correlate to bird performance. We try to keep as close to 100 as possible.
Now go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's live, folks. So we do know that one of the things that the poultry producers can use around this index, we like to use it in a couple different ways. It makes it very easy to understand where you are in terms of your intestinal gut health. It takes a very complex set of lesions and boils it down to one easily digestible number that will tell you, how am I doing on this particular bird performance? As the score decreases, your performance is going to decrease. The other thing I like to use it for is monitoring and benchmarking of where this producer is in their route on this particular program. We like to look at it over time to see, does this program look the same as it did this time last year or within this season, if they're on the same product. And we can really use that score to understand what lesions are really driving their problems or performance issues they might be having. They're certainly welcome to contact us. I said I'm a technical consultant with Elanco. We work very closely with the producers to benchmark and look at these indices and look at the health of the birds over time, really trying to evaluate. It's not just intestinal issues we're looking at. We're also looking at respiratory issues or immune systems, anything that might impact the health of that bird. By looking at that overall picture, we can really gain some insights into what those producers are facing. And because I do work with a lot of different producers, I can take that knowledge from place to place and use that expertise, that background to help people have the best possible program that they can and really make it data driven. I guess I'll give you one example. When I do a posting session, like I said, every bird starts out at 100, but as we identify those lesions that are fed into that system, they're going to lose points. And when we did a previous HTSi data analysis, what we found was that for every 1 point of loss on the index, you lost 13 thousandths of a point of feed conversion. Now, to make the math a little easier on that, if your index score goes from 100 down to 90, that represents 1.3 points of feed conversion, which in the modern broiler production system, that's a cent a cost per bird. So, as the millions of birds that we have out there, that adds up very, very quickly. So that's the value of the index and the HTSi intestinal integrity score.
So now I understand that you've also just completed a study that looked at the U.S. broiler industry. Tell us a little bit about the results that you found in that study.
Sure. So I really like looking at data. And so it was a request that I had for our internal team of experts to, can we look at this data package and really dig into it, see if we see any deeper trends or patterns that might be in there. So what we did was we pulled out 68,000 parameters from our database. It ran from January of 2016 through December of 2020, just to have a nice routine of seasonality and enough data to really work with. We wanted to really get whatever key insights we could on, like peak challenge times in broilers and across the US, and whether it was age related or season or, the specific feeding program the birds might be on, or, even down to what particular production system are you in? So what anticoccidial programs are you even allowed to use? Because we know that every coccidial program is going to have its own unique features as far as when birds are going to have elevated severity or even just incidence of coccidial lesions or other lesions that might occur in that gut. So just a little background, we do these necropsies about every 8 weeks or so. And then after each necropsy, I will generate a very specific individualized report for that assessment. And we'll be looking at, what lesions did we see in that necropsy that might be impacting that particular producer. And then I'll also go in and benchmark. So there are different ways that we can benchmark. One way is if you want to compare yourself to the entire United States poultry industry, we have that capability. We have a huge data set to compare to the entire industry. If you want to get a little more regional, like I said, I live in Alabama, so I'm in the region that we call the Deep South. And so if your complex is set here in the Deep South and you want to look at it strictly around what are the similar conditions to my area, we can do that. And we also have that capability for other parts of the US. Say you just want to see what are my postings like within my company. If I have multiple complexes and I want to just see how do I look from complex A to B? Am I on track? Say you just want to look within that particular complex. I'm only interested to see how changes within that particular complex are happening over time. We use another tool. It's called control charting. It is a statistical method that allows us to track changes over time. And what I look for are if there's minor variations, that's okay. That's normal and accepted. What I then look for are the major deviations. And the control charting really lets me see that in a very easy picture to be able to tell people, it's like, you look great here, but hey, we're ticking up over here. We might need to look at that. I guess the other parameter I would put around the data that we looked at was, I think I already kind of said, this isn't just coccidiosis. This is everything that would affect the health of that bird, whether it's a skeletal issue you might be running into, or obviously reovirus has reared its head in the last decade or so and has really impacted some of the bird health out there. So that's something else that we do look at. But anyway, to give you a very specific example, what I looked at for in this data set was very much around feeding programs and coccidiosis incidence and severity. So pulling out one example, looking at a program where you are only feeding, say, an ionophore, or you were only feeding a ionophore chemical combination product. What we found was that Eimeria acervulina, the gross lesions of which, they are very much going to be peaking at 21 days of age. And that's in both in terms of severity and incidence. What we did find, and what I didn't expect, was that there was a seasonality switch. The peak will be higher in the spring, both in terms of incidence and severity, and it's the lowest in the fall. So if I have a program where I'm working with a producer and I see their acervulina lesions start ticking up in the fall, that's a signal to me that something's changed here. We might need to look at either putting in an intervention or, let's go ahead and move to the next program. So
a really great way to benchmark too then, right?
Yeah.
Between barns or even in a barn itself in terms of over a period of time. So always a valuable tool for producers to have. I want to remind everyone who's joining us either via social media or through our Feedstuffs 365 platform to post your questions, and we'll get to those here shortly. So what does this all mean then when looking when poultry producers look at their options when it comes to seasonality and age? Are those things that factor in as well?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll give you another example. When we looked at where our level of microscopic Eimeria maxima was cycling, that was more around the 28-day mark. And that, again, was also in terms of, that was where we peaked in terms of severity and incidence. Its cycling pattern was different, though. It was highest in the winter and lowest in the summer, so different than acervulina. So by tracking those two different metrics, it really helped us figure out where their program was going. Another example would be if you are using a coccidial vaccine. You're going to see earlier cycling than you normally would with a in-feed medicated product. Caveat to that then would be is if you're using a bioshuttle program. If you are not using a bioshuttle program, our data showed that you will see a secondary cycling of cocci later on, which we know any kind of cycling costs performance. And so we know we were losing some performance there. So it's probably one reason why bioshuttle programs have become so incredibly popular. All that goes into say that gut health is all about nutrient absorption. We're feeding them a very precise, expensive feed, and we've got to get the birds to take it in. We've also worked really hard on keeping their immune system in good shape, because if you don't have a good immune system, you're sick all the time. You don't feel good. That can lead to disease resistance in birds, which we certainly don't need any of. If we compromise that gut health, we've got to act quickly. And that's one thing that we can do with these posting sessions is get in there, see what's going on, identify if we need to implement any kind of intervention strategies early, and just really looking at that I2 score to guide us in terms of, are we good? Are we slipping? I like to go in with a very well-planned program. It allows me to generate the best I2 scores that I can for the season, for the age, for the program. There are a few other things that feed into that. We do need to look at how are we rotating programs? What programs are you allowed to use within your production system? Quite frankly, we look at what are your on-farm strategies to control coccidiosis, because that can impact how well our products and programs work. It's really about guiding us through data to get us to the best performance that we can possibly get these producers. There's a limited number of products we've got. We have ionophores, we have chemicals, we do have vaccines, antibiotics, and some other in-feed non-medicated products. And that's it. That's all we've got. So we've got to manage those properly in order to really get the best value for the producer for the products they're using. One other thing I would say is biosecurity is really important right now, and especially in light of the AI situation. So we need to be able to control entry into the house, rodent and pest control, really anything that's going to introduce disease to that poultry house and that producer.
Mm-hmm. Even our transportation related features. Oh gosh. So you mentioned, a program, the importance of having a program, intestinal integrity program. Give us a general idea on how you go about establishing that and what makes for a well-planned program in poultry production.
Sure. Um, we we really want to look at what are the objectives of the customer? What are they trying to get out of it? And then what products are they allowed to use? So between those two parameters, we can figure out what their aims and objectives are. And then we can go into our data set and say, this would probably fit your profile best. And then this is where we're going to go to next. And then, if we can plan things out 3 years and actually run that program through, that flows pretty well. And it takes the guesswork out. It takes the questions out. And it really does allow you to say, are we on track? Is the data saying yes, no?
And I would assume an industry partner like Elanco coming in to assist producers with this is really going to bring a little bit of a different perspective as well as a different knowledge base. Would you concur with that?
Absolutely. So like I said, I work with most of the different producers in the Deep South. So I do get to lay eyes on a lot of different production systems, a lot of different techniques, interventions, strategies. And our whole team really feeds into that. We obviously have a large team that we talk and we compare notes and say, this worked well here. This could use a little help here. We are always looking to bring new and better products to the market. And if there's some next generation product we can bring that will be a great intervention for this particular issue, that's something we're definitely looking at. Because we have those strong relationships with people, we kind of hear, what do you need? What do you want us to bring? And if you don't have those relationships, it's really hard to guess, right? Sorry.
Well, I say you're also probably comparing notes when it comes to, like we just talked about, avian influenza and those kinds of situations on where they might be and having to perhaps even adjust a program as a result.
Yes, absolutely. Because if they're having to market flocks early, if there's something, a disease situation in that area that we have to, it may require more additional time on feed or whatever the parameter is that needs to be modified. And, we definitely try to help monitor, are the products being used properly? Do you have the correct withdrawal times? And just how are things going for them? And because we have such a large database, it does allow us to do that. We do like to do field trials with folks. I will say that, product evaluations or field trials, it's a great way to get some on the ground data. And it allows us to add data to our database to say, this is how this program looked or worked, or, if we do enough of those, we can then take that information and do a really deep dive on that information and say, within this particular program, across this number of complex of this age, of this season, this is the expectation. And again, it's not a guess at that point. It's like this, the data says this, and this is the performance you can kind of hope for, bank on.
Anything else that you'd like to add to this topic that perhaps I haven't asked about or we haven't talked about?
I guess I would most strongly encourage folks to take the time to really assess how their program's going. Don't just put it on automatic pilot and hope that things are going well. Let's get in there and actually evaluate it. And we'll put it in, we can, if there is something that's maybe not going exactly how it should, we can put those early interventions in place and adjust the program as they need to. Let's do it before you lose performance, before we lose all those days on feed. And hopefully that way it'll be sustainable poultry industry for a long, long time to come.
So how can our viewers go about getting more information on HTSi or anti-coccidial programs, any of those kinds of things, that the areas that you work in?
Oh, I would be pleased if you want to send me, drop me an email. The spelling's a little different on my name. It's Francene, that's Francene, and then a dot, and it's Van, VAN _ Sambeek, that's SAMBEEK, at elancoah.com. And I would love to hear from folks and hear their impressions of what their issues are, or what is program planning, even more, what can we do? We have a whole data analytics team to help with that. The other place I would point you to is we do have a website. It's called elancopoultry.com backslash I and then the number 2. So intestinal integrity 2. We have a lot of resources there. So it's a great place to go if you just want to read some information and find out some more, find out more. So.
Well, thank you so much, Francene. Thank you for joining us here today and for sharing your information and insight. We very much appreciate your time. We appreciate all of you that are here with us today as well. A reminder that all Feedstuffs 365 programming is available on demand at feedstuffs365.com. You can also access all of our longer format webinars that we do on a fairly regular basis on that same page. Of course, watch that page too for our upcoming sessions. Drop us a note too if there's some specific programming or interview that you'd like to see us do. Until next time, for Feedstuffs 365, I'm Sarah Muirhead.